Okay, so this is probably gonna be it, right?
Might as well get started.
Yeah.
You might get a few lingering in and they'll.
So I have a question, and there's probably a question. How many people here have been to all the meetings up until now? I don't have candy, but. So how many have you been to? No one. All right, so what we typically do is go into breakout groups, and I'm gonna talk about what we're gonna talk about in a minute, but we could do it with just this. That, or we could break into two. Is that okay? What?
We're all set now.
That round should start, right? What we'll do is we'll probably have Barney do this facilitating, although Jason and I will criticize him, so that will work well. And so we're gonna be putting stuff over there, so maybe we can drag the chairs over this way, okay? We have a pretty full agenda tonight. First meeting we did, the first one we did access to the pier from the land side, second one we did access to the pier from the water side, and tonight we're gonna be specializing on fishing. Work. We're gonna be talking about what are the issues now and how they can be improved. And we're also going to say comments and before I begin, to talk about the future. What will we do? What do we do in terms of sea level rise to make it work for the fishermen? And also, we're going to ask you, where do you think fishing is going to change on the island in the next 20 years? Any thoughts you have?
From the Ouija board.
I hope for your crystal ball. So, anybody have any questions? Have it be sunny.
It's not as much.
It's okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, it's very focused, so it makes sense that we have a smaller group. All right, so.
You want to just do a quick reminder, that this is our third or fourth meetings. The last planned meeting will be next week, same time, same place, Thursday.
And we're gonna be talking about parking. We expect a good turnout for that meeting.
In addition, we've invited Colin Greenan from the Army Corps of Engineers, who we met with as a design team earlier on this year to try to talk about some of the constraints or opportunities related to permitting, whatever it is that we agree we want to design. So our intent is, as we continue to get ideas from you all, and we can get concurrence on some of those ideas, present topics or at least design ideas that Colin can speak to a little bit and provide some firsthand informational knowledge to you, as our goal is to wrap this phase of the project up with you and then get to a concept that can get permitted, that then can get out for funding. And with funding, we're talking about state and or federal funding opportunities. But from what I've heard from the folks who are giving the money out is that the most important thing for any project is to have concurrence. And we want to be able to deliver a project on your behalf that vast majority, we're hopeful that we get to a point where we have a unanimous affirmative vote from your select board that this is the project we want to move forward with. And then we can get that for permitting.
And concurrence of the state.
Yeah.
Well, sure, yeah. Yeah, so we build a stakeholder concurrence through these 4 meetings. We'll report back out, and then we're hopeful that with that, we can get overarching, select board concurrence with a direction for us as a design team to move forward for permitting a project that then we can get funding for.
And after we do the parking meeting next week, we will then take a hiatus for these guys and come back to you again.
Right.
It's kind of like, okay, based on everything we've heard, here's probably 2 plans. Here is a lower budget plan, and here is a higher budget plan. And you guys can figure out which one you want. or if it's a combination.
Depends on much concurrence.
Right.
Well, the right number, that's fine. There's a lot of concurrence. there.
Just to get the comment.
So can you guys, think you guys can move your tables this way, or maybe sit at this table? Or
Yeah, we can reorganize the tables real quick.
because this is where we're gonna be writing things down.
And we can push them together. Yeah, push them together, we can put a couple maps on the table. Yeah.
I tried really hard to remember everything, but I'm sure. I had two pizzas in that car and I wanted to get home, so I wasn't really paying.
We're all one group here. Okay. Yeah, first, we can see part of your page.
Is this working? Yeah, it's working. Should I sign it?
So I guess we can get going here. We ought to talk about the rules first. There are no rules. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And how many people have family members that are fishermen or fishermen wannabes? Or who's used to Okay, so I think everybody's there. Tonight is the fisherman meeting. I'm going to move back.
Have to be near that.
Oh, okay.
You're just, if you stand right there, you're behind and right smack in the camera. You want to move a little bit to the left.
Okay, here?
So it captures, no, go for it, Jason. Try.
Okay, so what we've done is we've kind of captured in the previous meetings the parts of the pier that the fishermen use the most. And what we've kind of, if you look at your plans, this is the barge ramp here. This is the neck of the pier. This is the where the wayfarer is. We're calling this the northeast. The northwest pier face right here. And that we understand the fishermen use a lot. We're also calling out the area that's northwest of the barge ramp, this area right here.
Can I ask you again,
Sure.
to not call it the hydrant, because that's the only boat launch here, so just call it the boat launch.
Okay,
So
so,
everybody who owns boats on this island, that's like our road to the mainland,
okay,
and that's the only place we have to launch our boats, that we put at the wharf.
So we'll just call it the ramp, yeah.
Boat ramp, boat ramp, boat ramp.
okay.
I'm sorry, I just don't want you to think that it's just for the commercial buy.
Right.
Yeah, we
No,
just
It's
try
what
to-
everybody in the town uses to put their boats.
Understood, yeah. We're just trying to use the same nomenclature, so.
Well, I want you to be on board with that.
Got it.
That's a great point you made. So we've got the northeast side, the northwest ahead of the ramp. Then we've got the ramp itself. We want to understand how the fishermen are using that. And then we've got these two commercial floats here. So I'm just going to go through each of those areas, and there may be other areas, and we can talk about those too. But for us to design the facility, we want to understand how you use it and what your needs are. And so we're looking for, I guess, first of all, how do you use this northeast pier face? Are there tidal and seasonal conditions that impact that area?
Right, that drowns out the low tide there.
Right, so this is only accessible at high water, right?
Pretty much everything's only at high water.
Okay,
Except for the commercial flow.
Except for here, right? That are-
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so. And then, obviously, how does the wind direction favor this? Do you use, obviously, if the wind's blowing out of the northeast, you won't be using this pier face, you favor coming over here? Correct. Is that right? Okay. And so on a given day, how many people would, if the wind's blowing out of the southwest, say in the summer, how many people would use this pier face in each day?
I mean, I think it's mostly like, it's really busy when everybody's setting their traps.
Yeah,
You know, met from Memorial Day.
getting all your gear out?
And out into the water, yeah. So like on a day in June, there's apt to be 6 or 8 people in and out of there. You know, once everybody's kind of in full swing, it's, you know, a boat might come in to grab, you know, some supplies or whatever.
Okay,
It's not used super often, but it's only, you know, high tide.
so you'd have 6.
And it's also a dry dock for a lot of people, right?
So you'd
We
have
can
6
actually go
to 8
there.
boats.
We work on it during the season.
And then if you were drawing out, you'd come up further up the beach.
No, I can't get in past the furthest piling really.
Okay, and furthest point you can see the start of the deck, is that right?
And back a little bit,
Okay.
you know, back to the north.
The fishing boats still go past this right? When they come in, that's where the boats come.
This is your low water.
So they go from here to here.
Okay,
You want me to read off this?
Yeah, there's really not much water in that area.
Right.
Except, yeah.
yeah, we've got a low tide picture of the facility here, if anybody wants to look at it. So, and do you need to get your vehicles right to this area? Is that necessary?
Yeah, and a trailer sometimes.
Absolutely.
Collectively, how many traps have to go off seasonally off and on?
You can't have lost.
I mean, most of the guys pick 800, 800 each, yeah, so.
How many people use it?
And some people do it, some, their own thing.
Yeah, I don't know, 12,
I would say,
yeah.
So you said 6 to 8 boats come in here regularly,
Yeah, and then a couple on the northwest side, 2 or 3.
2 to 3 down here?
no, with the green things on. No,
Right
right
here.
here, up top.
Towards the.
Yeah, that's right
boat
there.
ramp.
So this is where we close,
Right,
and then, like Mr. Johnson and a lot of people come up there.
so I'd say 2 to 3 boats here.
Hey, Mark, would it be easier if we put that on the easel and you would be kind of not on shit?
Easy to take.
So that's still, I guess that's 8 to 11. So,
Yeah, and that's full-time boats, I mean, they're smaller, you know, guys that go on skiffs or whatever, that come in.
Right,
Fishing
and
traps, so, you know.
New younger kids coming up, too.
right, so I understand and we do have a young man in the audience, not to pick on you, but you can go straight into it, right? Because you don't have to wait for your license, is that right?
One license, yeah.
Yeah, I go with my friend. And I'm hopefully gonna get a little water for myself this year. But I guess I probably wouldn't be using that area, I guess I probably use this.
You use these floats here?
Probably, we don't have that many traps.
Okay. All right, so, and,
On the other side of the ramp too, that is used, yeah.
at the golf tee,
Yeah, exactly that.
so, and that is, especially now because of the wind and the weather.
No, the new dredge.
Oh, the new dredge has got more water.
Yeah.
All right, so I just will put more here. Obviously title dependent, but aren't there, it says on the plan that there's a haul off in that area that used or,
Oh, it's usually a small boat that we get in on the P.
okay.
Kind of hard to back truck and
I'll
go there.
put small boats here.
Yeah. And I went down and looked at low tide today, because they didn't dig right into the pier, as you guys know.
Yeah.
because They're not going to, they're not recorded permit.
Mhm.
Right,
There's still a bunch of fill and rocks in there.
And they haven't finished most of the turning basin. They still have, that's what's left to go.
oh, when are they gonna do that?
We'll keep you posted. When we find out.
When we get some dynamite.
So was that intended to be done? at
Yes,
this time?
yeah, it gets, we can't really talk about it right now.
But it came back in the survey, is that what happened?
Yeah, I mean, they knew it didn't get done.
Okay,
They had a different kind of, they didn't know they were gonna hit marine clay, and they didn't have the right equipment. So we're working on it. That's all I can say. No, ledge was a different, that's a different.
okay,
That
so.
was, we did, they did it.
All right, so just to recap then, we've got 6 to 8 boats using the northeast face, tidal dependent. You also dry boats out, if you get something wrapped around your prop or something like that. You need to get your vehicles to this area.
All the time or just seasonally?
And pretty much anytime you're bringing your boat in there,
Used to be
load
available.
or unload something that's coming from the
Used to be
shop.
always available.
I was thinking about, I was running through the numbers in my head, it's more than 6 or 8,
I
it's
agree.
10, solid 10.
So,
8%.
Well, I mean, you know, boats that push around. Yeah.
And I don't come in there and run the number and stuff.
right,
It's hard to put numbers on it. It's definitely very much small. Very much a key part of it.
So can I go back for a sec? You mentioned, so this is primary loading gear and then you're out, and then you're coming back and doing servicing. Is that in this area?
Yeah.
Is it picking up stuff over on this side too, or is it depending on what's going on, whatever's convenient?
Depends a lot on the tide, obviously. It's
Tide,
easier to get
yes.
in, if it's high tide, you're putting a tank on the boat or something, it's easier to get in on the northeast side than the boats.
you don't
Doing
have,
mechanical work.
can't get right to the edge with your vehicle on this one.
No, that's more mechanical work, or you came in for something and you did both for a while.
Right.
Lost some tanks.
And so, how many vehicles per boat use that or part? Just the one vehicle?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So the truck and a trailer, I think is what you.
How many trailers, Joe, are there? How many people have trailers?
Like me, Sherm, Jack Hanson, Alex,
Andrew,
yeah.
Pretty much
Pretty
everybody.
much most of everything there.
Really, that, right?
Yeah, at least, yeah.
Are you just using the trailer when you drop your stuff in at the beginning of the season, right? Or is it-
Yeah, and then the reverse at the end of the season.
Right.
and in the mid-season, I might have my tanks. To dip the traps, to bring it down to.
And is there times when you can't get in because there's somebody in front of you or two, 3 people in front of you?
Yeah, if you get down there both time, pretty much any time. Yeah, it's gonna be, you're gonna have to wait.
But you guys work it out. When
Commercial boat.
the commercial guys work out when they work it out together.
Yeah, everybody kind of does things a little bit differently, like some of the guys bring their stuff down a low tide and drop it off and get out of there. And then some guys bring the boat in at high tide in the trailer and just put it all in one shot.
So is it working?
Yeah, I mean, it has, yeah.
Everyone knows the boat schedule, you guys work around it all.
Okay.
And everything messes with your spot, if you dig. The only. Hotel.
So, and the boats move around depending on the weather. right?
I didn't hear what you said, sorry.
Do the boats use the different areas depending on the weather? So you wouldn't have the same boats use this space every week. If the weather was better for using it over here, you'd wait and use this.
Tides are equal. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so there's, in June and November, there's no parking on that northwest side, but if you're there, you know, when there is parking allowed, there's cars there everywhere, so it's not super easy to get in there unless there's an open spot that you can kind of shuffle your stuff through.
And do you have any restrictions here right now with your vehicles?
It's.
No, I mean, nobody, you're not really supposed to leave them there, but nobody really does, you know,
Yeah.
a lot of them don't really.
If hypothetically, if more space was available, would that just have more people coming in that maybe didn't want?
I don't think so.
So what about where do you take your cash?
There's a buying station out on the water, a couple of buying stations on the water. So really no product goes through there.
No product comes back.
Not really, I mean, unless somebody's bringing some home to eat or whatever, but it's not retail or something.
And is that by choice? Would you, I mean, there's not really a co-op here or anything like that, right?
On the shore.
Is that desirable or would it not work or?
No, the snacks come into a float
Yeah.
bait.
Yeah.
They're on the other side of the island.
It wouldn't be practical to do it on. like,
And it works, right?
Yeah, there's no advantage to have a land base.
Okay. So, and does the bait smack come all the way to the pier? You have to go over again,
Other side of the island, basically.
near the boatyard or?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, I'm not hearing if there's any huge problems.
No, it works fine.
That's unusual.
Yeah.
So. So,
No one shot anybody yet.
that's a good thing.
Not like we're saying this.
The donuts don't
That's what I
come.
was thinking.
All right, so, well, we're doing really well. So how do you use the ramp? The fishermen?
The boat ramp.
Boat ramp.
That's just launching your skip, basically, hauling it out.
Yeah, same as anybody that has a little outboard rig.
And but you would normally leave your skip in the water.
Yeah, it's not a daily thing, it's, you
Okay.
know,
Seasonal or if something happens to it, you need to work on it or something.
yeah.
All right. So this is really just as a boat ramp. Right, excuse me, one. And so these commercial floats, are they just for the fishermen or anybody can use those?
It says commercial, so I mean, a lot of folks that aren't fishermen are running a commercial operation, be it water taxi or charter or something will come in and use it, you know, from time to time. But it's mostly fishermen that use it.
Signed for fishermen. It's signed out there for fishermen.
I think it's just commercial, yeah.
Quite often we get very big hotel boats there.
I don't,
There's no sign, there was a sign at one point, but
It's gone now?
no, it says commercial.
Yeah.
it's like 4 signs that say commercial.
Yeah. But when I read it, it said commercial, I don't know if somebody wrote this or whether it did say commercial fishing boat.
It does. It
Yeah,
does say
I
that.
don't know if it says that on the ordinance.
I don't think it
Yeah.
says it on the wall.
Right. Yeah,
Well,
so
I
you
mean,
can
the
look at it today.
hotel might think that they're commercial.
No, it's people who come in
Oh, people.
who
going in,
have really
going
big
walking up to the
boats and
hotel.
they want to go to the hotel and it might be low tide, so they don't see the signs. But it's a couple dozen times a year, somebody parks there and then got Belgian Arrow and, you know.
But mostly, in my opinion, the intent is for commercial use, commercial fishing. Right, what I thought.
But we had a problem when we first, had that people were thinking they could just leave their boats there for a while. Just to, but that has not been a problem for a long time. Anybody, people only use it when they're working on their boat or something like that. I don't know.
Not necessary.
Oh, sometimes people are still doing that.
But there's
Yeah.
water taxes. too.
Well,
That's commercial.
yeah, I think it's an enforcement problem, but,
Yeah. I mean, the idea is that they're supposed to be in there getting something done at their boat or boating or boating. Not,
that's the idea.
not just leaving the boat and going home, right?
But just like the CCC, so if somebody did, somebody wins, it takes up the road.
Right.
I don't think there's any issue with people coming in on water that feet off and people off. So when they come over here and tie up and go hunting for the day, I think that's really annoying.
Just according to the congestion.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
That's similar to what we heard in some of these other quotes as far as enforcement and just training people who are going to use those facilities.
So we've identified what we're calling the northeast and up to the high water mark. We've got the commercial floats here. We've got this area here that we're calling the northwest of the boat ramp here. And we mentioned this area back here on the Gulf Tee, that's the haul-off area for some of the smaller boats.
Just one.
Just one, okay. And are there any other areas that you use on the pier?
But we have to float inside the boat there, that everybody uses the kind of elbows up, but that's not really a commercial use.
This one right here.
It's everybody.
And
But
that's
fishermen will hide their skips there.
If the weather, particularly if the weather is bad, right?
So that's one of the annual articles.
So it's not
And
well,
then there's some fishermen who tie up off the end here. That roll out. No, a little one. Yeah. Ernie guys up there.
It's certainly not consistently, Jeff, but I've seen you guys, by necessity, have to pull up the other seasonal floats. If somebody has to.
here,
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're, for loading and unloading only, it's a lot easier to go to the transient floats because it's a shorter ramp distance up. If you can back your truck down, it's only one ramp you have to go up instead of across two and across the CBC float.
I mean, I've seen you guys doing like this, I've seen you back to stern right in.
Yeah.
Go right off the stern, looking, and
That's a bit long.
Yeah.
Pleasure park. and then
Yeah.
Park, and that's where we want to go.
Yeah,
And then we park right at the top of it.
Are there any signs there? What do they say?
Say, unloading, loading, only.
short-term parking or short-term berthing or
15
something.
minutes, unloading, loading.
you know,
But there's one up high.
Yeah.
There's one.
One down low.
that and permit required or something.
Right.
Okay,
On that northwest side, boats go all the way, no, that's northeast, the other.
sorry, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
right there, where you're headed, boats go all the way up
To the,
yeah, right about there.
So
Like, I've been on there before when it's windy on the northeast. You know, depending on the wind. Maybe not up that far, but if everywhere else is full, it has been used.
And that whole area is blocked off in June and November, where there's no parking there at all,
so I'm gonna put X
in both of those areas.
and X, June and November. I do have that note right here.
Right now, that's in our ordinance, like June and November.
Okay. And obviously that's because of the other uses on the pier. So question number 2 is, what existing conflicts or challenges with the stone wharf do you observe at each location? We've kind of talked about that. We haven't really talked about them as so much conflicts as workarounds. So for example, out of the northeast pier face, there's the issue of congestion of vehicles. And particularly with trailers, that must be a little challenging to back those up as well, is it? Or you guys,
yeah, I mean, depending on what, because you gotta swing around in between the parking spots, so you can back down in there.
This is sort of your bottleneck right here.
Yeah, so I mean, if there's cars sitting there waiting for the boat or whatever, and you don't really have enough room to swing the trailer, back it down, it's tricky, but I mean, once you get pointed in the right direction, it's fine.
yeah. And so down here, you can only use this, can't use it between June and November. the
Well,
commercial.
they can, but they have to just put their stuff there. People expect it to put it there. During June and November, we regularly can't talk to them. But fishermen can still use it, and they do, and between them.
Oh, I misunderstood that. So
We can't park there in June, we can't park in November. Sometimes they use spaces there to move gear, and
Okay.
they put it in the parking space, and nobody,
Okay.
bothers with it.
So the boats can use it all year round, but the people just can't park there.
In those
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't get that.
But the person who's unloading their traps and stuff, if they're working on the traps, they can, and they're there, they can keep their.
They can bring it.
Right.
But they can't go out and leave it while they go and set traps.
Gotcha,
This is sort of the big takeoff, so.
okay. All right,
So
so,
coincides with your kind of, this is the lowest section, probably, so all cost.
I think this might be the lowest area.
This is the lower part, right here. You really want to use it?
Actually, it is.
And then here, these are the lowest spots.
When it floods, I saw Ernie Burgess in February
Oh,
of
water.
1996. He was putting traps off and the water was so far over the wharf that 2 traps were underwater.
I thought you meant lowest as far
And
as
then lower-
access to boats. You mean lowest as to the water level?
Yeah, well, physical elevation.
Obviously, come on, I'm only teasing you, man. You're doing a good job.
Okay.
I'm gonna leave. You guys don't want me.
Doing great.
Keep you close somewhere.
That's right. Put me next to one of the fishermen.
So the next question is, what could you envisage as solutions to the problems? So, okay, I think if we pick the vehicles, what would be a solution to dealing with the vehicles? You probably have the workarounds, like you stop moving your vehicles when a ferry comes in. For example, you probably just have to wait. But what other options would there be? Creating some sort of turnaround down here, would that be a solution?
Not the trail.
Right.
So you have to have big radius.
Currently, that's a staging area to pick up and drop off people's boats. Okay, so if you look at the complex,
Yeah,
all right, at both times, you may have 6 vehicles in that narrow neck of the field.
well, we noticed.
These guys are astute enough to avoid trying to back down while there's vehicles there picking up and dropping off people. When they get down in there, then those spaces are unavailable and traffic just moves out and life goes on.
So one possible workaround is not to let any non-commercial vehicles come out here. That would be,
Absolutely not.
that wouldn't be a good idea?
I would say no. You gotta have let people get down.
Because other people are using to get to the.
If there's no reason to pick up people off the CPC boat at that location where it is currently,
Yeah,
Right, if it don't move.
That would remove a bunch of congestion naturally.
correct.
Yeah, but I don't wanna see somebody have to, if the landing for CPC is in the same spot as it is right now, or even that, I don't wanna see somebody have to walk their groceries up to their car.
I mean, I'm just talking about the direction of comments have been to move the
Yeah,
landing up.
yeah, that's right.
So we're
talking-
yeah,
yeah.
Show them where they wanna put the CPC. I don't think Jeff knows.
Well,
No, I know.
Yeah, they wanna put CPC when we're here.
No, I know, but I'm just going off what's on there, right?
yeah.
I understand that part of it could move.
Hey,
All
Barney,
right.
But it's good to know that that having it to yourself is not something that you want.
Well, he's gonna be carrying groceries over. So-
I just have a question for you and the fishermen people. Would there be any advantage to thinking about designing an attachment to the side of that northeast end of the pier?
Here or something?
The piling structure, would there be any advantage, in your opinion, to having more available deck space?
I mean, yeah, of course, if you could. I mean, it's like if that cove was backed over or something, and you could get up to it on the high water, it would be an advantage.
But Mark, you're talking about
I
a
don't know.
discrete turnaround or just widening the whole section?
I'm just talking about a concept of widening it for commercial, advantage of use.
Yeah.
Oh,
I don't know if it'll be any,
no, I mean, if you just go wider but keep the same length, then I would say no. I mean, if there was more area where you could tie it up, but.
How about if you stuck something off, going off toward the east end, not there because there's not enough water, but near the end?
Yeah,
Title.
It's still.
this would
They
block
get
your,
too far
block
out.
your boats.
Well, but would it help you though at high tide? I mean,
you know, more working.
Yeah, I don't know, it kind of block in that area for trying to get in now.
yeah, so it really wouldn't be an advantage.
What's that really work?
Yeah, and it does, I mean, people are very respectful of, you know, trying to
It
work around
seems-
both schedules and trying to work with each other.
It seems like what, you know, I'm not a fisherman, obviously, but we've made great strides with talking about moving the CTC ramp up, and it's allowing more freedom
Yeah.
for the commercial people without spending that amount of money for that piece. It gives them what they want when we're dealing with the parking, which you're gonna talk about other times, but that to me was very positive.
I just wonder, what the tipping point would be about, say, we have a lot of people who are using either their own shore, they're using Bennett's, or they're using Chandler's, or Sandy, or whatever. What's the tipping point for how many more might come up there where it would be more of a problem?
I think we probably saw that 20 years ago.
Right, I guess I'm thinking it's not as busy as it was.
It's not, but I mean, I think we're fortunate, there's some younger folks
Yeah,
that seem to
right.
be interested in fishing. I mean, the whole industry in Maine kind of like lost a bunch of years of kids coming into the fishery because of the license restrictions. Now it's easier for kids to get their license, and hopefully there'll be more interest going forward, but we haven't had a lot of younger fishermen get into it, but I think there's potential that there's gonna be some in the next.
But don't you think as long as we have multiple places where people can get to the water, that we're probably going to spread out enough, even if we.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see more people going out Essential though, once the guys that go out Essential aren't there anymore, I don't think there's gonna be.
You don't think people will go down there
I
and
don't think so, it's a lot harder, I mean, it's a lot harder to go from there, from Sandy or something like that.
So, but your boats are getting bigger, right? Are they?
Yeah.
So when you come in, are you able to come in and dock like that?
You could, but you want grill, I mean, I don't think there's any boats which are big that are rigged on the port side, so
Okay,
they're
so
coming
you
straight in.
come up on this side, because that's where you're rigged.
I guess it's one, but, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
just another question if I may.
sure.
If that stayed the same height as it is today, would there be any advantage or need to think about any sort of a hydraulic boom lift?
If there was something over the commercial floats, I could see it getting used from time to time.
So in here.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
you know, the floats?
Yeah, the floats would be the only place, like Freeport has something that they use,
Yeah.
and people set traps in Freeport at all times. And they'll use the hoist to lower the traps down.
I think they're higher. They're higher elevation.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Right now, there's a big concrete bulkhead down there that's Prop Marine.
Right,
I think he's talking about, maybe thinking about something fabricated for that.
that is right here.
It's right above, it's right above the CPC.
Yeah.
It goes all the way down.
The only
Yeah.
problem with putting a hoist here, I would think, is that that's kind of the pedestrian travel to the transient.
There's enough boats that have massive booms on them anyway, and they use them, I know Alex moving stuff off on his boat.
Okay. So
So if it stayed the same height, probably not a lift, but that gets into the next question, and we're kind of moving through the list here.
right, so,
Yeah, but before we move on, do you guys have any more suggestions that you guys would like to present?
Not really, just, I mean, obviously, like, this bottleneck, it's too narrow there.
at the neck,
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, so that, you just block, if it went more road, lane, so people back, no, so just come back down while the cars are parked, oh, that was pretty different, thing, but yeah, talking to a woman at CTC, I've been. So let's, this take up, so move it back.
Yeah. And for those who haven't been at the meetings, I don't think it's a secret, that has been the focus of all the meetings.
Yeah, I've been here about it, so.
Yes.
So, but this float likely in that scenario doesn't, it moves some, but this ramp gets substantially longer as part of why this needs to move or how it all works together.
The float's pretty much gonna stay in the same place.
Yeah, well, I would, I'm more just on traffic flow, like, yeah, when there was, when this was moved up. Yeah. Just all those cars can be much of an issue. Yeah, we have people physically. So it's not, nothing to close really, it's just, obviously there would be less traffic.
But getting back to this, to putting a hoist here, you'd be kind of creating another bottleneck, I think, because you'd be putting your trucks and your hoist right there. Would it be better to make this a commercial float here?
So,
It's because of the water.
Sits on the bottom.
Yeah.
ground out.
All right.
There's a lot of need for those.
Then just one other thing while we're on that is the pilings on both sides are pretty bad, especially the northwest side, but even the northeast side, ones are getting bad too. I think that's one thing that I'd like to see is the pilings in there.
You mean the ones that you lay up against?
Yeah.
Jeff?
The bigger
Yeah,
one.
The wooden fender box, they're.
I think the Stevens point, if you wanted to get,
Yeah,
if you wanted to add on to the wall at all, getting widening it out at that bottleneck would probably.
So change this, so there's a little more of a tanker here as opposed to just a.
If you wanted to put pylons in, deck it over, I mean, that would be that's the narrow spot, so, yeah, you could. I think that would. be
Yeah, something like
beneficial,
that.
Say, yeah.
One of the other things we've talked about, just for reference, is that maybe there's a pedestrian flow that comes along here, then comes across, so trying to allow more circulation in here maybe, but widening this out could also serve that purpose and provide for extension there.
Right. But in that scenario, Jason, if it was that scenario, they would have to come down like all traffic, go like this with their trailer.
Right, and then come back, basically do like a hairpin and then go back. But isn't that probably what you do now? You just come in, do it here and then.
Right. Well, yeah, so not to beat this to death, but when you move your trailer back, where do you make that turn? Right in this spot here?
Steven backs boats home all the way home.
Well, usually just drive down Wharf Road and then do a big turn, like face, right in there, and then back down.
Okay. All right, so, I'm surprised that you don't use the boat ramp more. But I guess it's really so narrow that it's not like other ramps that has a float alongside it or something.
Use it for what?
I'm sorry?
You're surprised that they don't use it for what?
Well, so, putting their tracks on, a float system that can run here,
You
it's
can't get in it.
not wide enough.
No, it's not people.
Okay, so but I thought the Army Corps just dredged and made this a little deeper. No, okay.
We still gotta get that clarity on or something, right?
We're still supposed to get more water in there. One of the things, this may sound really crazy, but what about if you filled in the wharf where the boat ramp is and then extended the boat ramp out off the end? You just made the whole thing come back out into the water where the deeper turning basin is.
Yeah, you have some water that's coming up here.
But what I meant is if somehow, and I don't know how you do it, but you fill in that area where it is, make the wharf back the way it was, and then have some kind of a ramp that comes off into the water from there. I don't know if you can build something like that.
Basically, you either raise the elevation here or you take the top of the ramp and you can push it out further and run
That's what I'm
not-
saying, I'm saying
Yeah.
just fill that in and start
Right.
closing the water.
Yeah, you see that in a lot of places down where the,
Yeah, it just seems like that would give you more area on the wharf, and it would get you into that deeper basin if they're able to.
We can use the top where it is and make an incline all the way to the basement. It's pretty steep right now.
Mhm.
And there's times in the summer where you get stuck in this algae, cement that's all.
okay.
So
But
maybe.
that's not gonna
People don't put
do-
a
I was
full
gonna
track
say,
on their mobile.
yeah, you would use that, right?
Right,
That's
no.
not gonna do anything.
Right, I hear you.
It's not wide enough.
No, it's just not practical. Your trailer's gonna be underwater, your boat's gonna be up here. They put them on the wharf and when they come out of that tide, you just throw them across.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah, they don't listen to it.
The other thing about pushing that large ramp out too far, I've done it, like I said this morning at low tide, and where they stop digging on the other side, so it's McNulty or the old Putnam Cottage, that is not really that far away. We may have to ask permission to have that dug further. to
Well,
the
it's
bigger
supposed
turning
to, it's
radius.
supposed to go further, that's where the issue is.
Okay, part of the ongoing discussion.
Yeah.
So once that all gets ironed out, we'll get that information from them and incorporate that into whatever we're doing here, so that we have those.
That's really
constraints.
hard, boat ramp, excuse me. design.
Yeah,
So we ready to talk about the future?
so, well, we skipped over, and this is we should talk a little bit about sea level rise, because it's,
Yes, that's the future.
it's coming, and, so we are gonna be doing a sea level rise study that will show you for this particular area, what the models are predicting. And so, we know that this area floods now. I think everybody's seen it over time.
Some, I don't know.
And,
But I don't think we need to get into that detail. I mean, we just, at some point, we need to talk about what could be happening in 20, 30, 40 years from now. So it's not, as opposed to arguing like when it's gonna happen and how much it's gonna happen. We don't need to get into that now.
yeah, no, it's not an argument, it's just an understanding, and I guess, what are your, the fishermen, what are your expectations in terms of understanding that the pier is gonna get raised?
Or part of it might get raised.
Or
So
part of
that's-
it raised,
It's, yeah, we're not fixed on any solution at this point.
right,
I mean, if it's raised immediately, it's hard, it's gonna be that much harder to load and unload traps, and it's just that simple.
yeah,
If it was raised a foot, is that,
Yeah, definitely, yeah, I mean, if you're, I mean, if you come in there on 11-foot tide, the 1 foot raise isn't gonna be terrible, but if you come in on 8.5, you're gonna be going stuff, your traps up. I mean, a foot, I guess, is probably still manageable, but if you start talking about more than that, it really makes that place not usable.
Jason, what's the current difference in elevation of the stone pier? I think I've seen you folks write down, it's almost a foot and a half.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a foot and a half, 2 feet, right.
Correct. So if the entire stone pier were at the same elevation, is there a consensus whether or not that would be a hindrance to fishing operations, acceptable fishing operations, and or a solution to the overtopping and pedestrian traffic? Right now, the whole pier is not level. Right. The highest spot's probably where you take out, right?
where would that be?
Well, you have the grades. you got-
yeah. So my understanding is this is the lower side here, and that is a great place to put your seasonal traps, you know, in and out.
Where the boat ramp is where it goes over first. No, the CTC 30,
Yeah,
where the top, there's a little bit further down.
In here.
That's where it overflows,
Yeah.
right there. That's where the water is, right, first, and then up there.
Well,
I think, am I wrong?
I have a question. If in fact the end of it wasn't raised at all, and it did overtop from time to time and storms and things like that, would that impact you? Because you guys would not be up there if the weather was bad and using and putting tracks up, right?
Yeah, right, on a big storm surge, generally not.
Yeah, so I mean, that wouldn't impact you if they changed the traffic flow.
It's usually a winter event.
Great, yeah.
In the summer?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Barney, if you raise the main part 2 to 3 feet and you didn't raise the end, you're gonna have to have a ramp.
Right, you have to,
Well, no, the whole pier goes like this, 1.5 feet, from one end to the other.
Yeah.
Right? Parts of it rarely get over top. The entire structure has a difference in elevation of 1.5 feet all over.
So if we call, if we say the head of the pier is sort of a fixed elevation.
You guys took the elevation grades, correct?
Yeah.
So you should be able to know, literally within the inch, whether the low spot is, correct?
Yeah, so we're saying on average that we're, right around 8. And then, elevation, 8, NDE, or not, NED.
that
And
be,
you indicate that's 8, NGD was at.
So North American vertical data, so we're talking about state plan coordinates and vertical data.
So
elevations.
it's 8 feet above sea level. What do you think?
It's a reference point.
Yeah, yeah.
So
So that's,
What's the standard for construction?
I'm just curious. Sweet spot.
in terms of taking
That number. If you were to build something new
so
in Portland, what's the number?
you look at the design life of the facility and you design it for that storm
But
event.
isn't there a set? I thought it was around.
Right, so this is part of the bigger picture discussion, it's what, 9.5 now, is what we would call the design storm elevation without sea level rise. But FEMA has gone through and put preliminary maps out that bump that up to like 20. So-
Right, so if we said we want 10, we'd have to say, we have to get that approved by FEMA.
Correct, that's part of
What
what.
is the FEMA standard, just say in Portland, just, is there a gen, is 20?
Changes.
It changes from
But
site to
it's like
site.
overall it's 20, is that?
Depends on the wave exposure.
Yeah, right, so we're exposed.
What happened is.
So, yeah, so it's kind of,
We're in a mess at the storm.
right,
He's
so
gonna tell you why.
as far as the island goes, they go
But as
around.
far, right, as
Yeah.
far as.
So they've gone around the island and figured out that they, because the old FEMA flood maps, mid-80s, they've gone around the island and determined that the new base flood elevation is somewhere between 13 and 14. But because of the way they modeled it or didn't model it, particularly at the Stone Wharf, they missed the data point, is our professional opinion, and they put it at 20. So we need to go through and modify that, go through that process and put it down where it's supposed to be 13, 14. But if we were to design something for the future, we wouldn't just set it there, we would set it a foot or 18 inches above that elevation, so that when you do get storm surges, you don't have the facility underwater. And then the part of the facility that I think we're trying to keep above water would be, at least be the pedestrian access, so that your CTC can remain active, and to the extent that that's used for EMS, that remains active during those storm events. And the reason the question came up about, well, if you get a storm surge, you're gonna be setting traps, if we leave part of it lower, then maybe that's not an issue from an operations standpoint. But what we're trying to get at is that in order to get to what we think we're gonna settle in with the base flood elevation and how that relates to the uniform working surface of the pier, is probably on the order of 3 feet higher than where it is now. So if we're contemplating doing that, we want to continue this discussion to understand, should we do that for a strip? Should we do that for this piece? Should we have a ramp that comes down here and not touch sort of the finger in the neck of the pier?
Right. Well, that's where the hoist might come in. If you can't, if there are some areas that we need to raise for other reasons, because to protect other uses, that may make those areas and this is what we're trying to wrestle with, we want to keep the facility, usable for the fishermen. But we want to look at we just want to understand if we raise things, say out here, a foot or 2 feet, is that going to really cripple your operation? And just so that we have that information.
Yeah, I mean, well, you see some of the older guys out there still doing it by themselves, they set traps, pick up traps by themselves, and,
Yeah,
again, maybe a foot, they could still do it, but any more than that, I think they're really in a struggle.
And
yeah.
I didn't use a hoist for traps, you envision that,
Yeah, they do it before.
they put a bunch together or something.
Yeah,
They don't just do one.
yeah, it's,
We're working on pier facilities in Kennebunkport, we've raised them all. And it's because they periodically got flooded, and when they get flooded, it's not just an inconvenience, it's, particularly when it happens in the winter, that water comes up and infiltrates the pier, freezes, does a lot of damage. So, that's what we're trying to avoid.
And Jason, if we get over the hurdle of FEMA's mapping height requirement, and we decide as a community that we want to go after a design for permitting, more importantly, something that would be eligible for state and federal grant funding, there will be requirements for addressing sea level rise.
We believe so.
You either have to make the pier resilient and anticipate overtopping, or you have to keep it clear. So,
I guess that's why I asked the question about if it overtops once in a while, would that negatively impact you guys? Would it be better to do that than to raise it?
Yeah. But, okay, FEMA might not like that.
But we can deal with that by, if we've got the piece that gets people on and off the island, we can say we're providing that accessibility. But we're not, for multiple reasons. One, for utility, two, because why spend the money raising this if you don't have to keep part of it down. We can still make it resilient. We can still do some of the strengthening measures to take advantage of that resiliency without raising that piece of it. The difference would be that there'd probably be a step down, but higher and lower, and then there would probably be a ramp that started back here. So we want to make sure that from a physical usable width, we understand how much you folks need, so that, if the trailer gets out of alignment a bit, or if there's something down there, even small bikes or something parked down, that you can still move around. You're not limited to like an 8 or 9 foot width. It's really tough to navigate.
So, you're not really talking about making this part super narrow, part that would be staying close to the same, you're actually talking about just raising this strip.
Yeah, right.
Because the air trucks still need to come out.
And Jason, in a case like that, if you figured out that by preserving that pedestrian way, it narrowed it so that they couldn't get their trailer down, would that be justification to maybe build it out
Yeah.
on the side?
So what I try to do there is, because these loads are a lot lighter than these loads, is I might take this and try to cantilever it out while not adversely affecting the mooring and berthing loads that come on the side of this from these slopes that are here. So try to keep the footprint as it is, because that's going to be your least cost,
Right.
while trying to maximize
That width.
this width.
I guess my question would be, if you were to build the main part up higher and try to leave the end lower and put a gradual ramp to do a transition, it wouldn't be the whole width of the existing pavement right now.
well, so this is, I believe we've got a scale here, but I think it's only about 24 feet wide. So we're taking some of it up with a pedestrian walkway.
If you take, say, 6 or 8 feet to
Yeah.
that,
That leaves a balance.
Okay.
So,
You wouldn't just mark that out and let it go up with the ramp?
so there's really, you could certainly do that in some areas, but one thing that you're trying to do, we talked about this at the first meeting a little bit, is you're trying to protect the pedestrians from themselves a little bit. You're trying to separate commercial and,
You have some sort of railing system
yeah.
here.
You got to barbed wire 12 feet high to do that, I'm sorry.
So I'm really good at it. Yeah.
Oh,
So,
it's just, that's another area of, standards. There's no railing requirement for a commercial pier. You still have to put some sort of curb in to prevent the vehicles going over the edge. But there's no railing requirement, whereas for a pedestrian ramp, there is a railing and fall protection.
and those can be rail systems that are removable so that as needed, you could use the facility for different functions. Or we could put them in 12 feet high and make it basically a constrained facility.
Well, I guess the question I would have is, let's say there was a vehicle already parked down there with or without a trailer. Would there be enough room, like 18 to 20 feet total for another vehicle to back
So
down?
that's what I was trying to get at, and we have to make sure that if you've got some, even, or if you get the off chance that somebody has a disabled vehicle, they just have to be there. So to make sure that you can still get passed by. So we would look to have something, 16 feet's tight, so we would look to be 20 feet, I think, to be able to get two vehicles.
Yeah, Cousins Island is 16 feet between the sidewalk and that drainage wall over there on the hill.
A little tight,
That's tight.
yeah, yeah.
If you wanted a walkway there's already a raised cement to help buttress the ferry coming in. You could put a walkway somehow up there, and it wouldn't interfere with the backup.
Right,
you
that's-
widen it out over the dock.
So that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, over the old staircase.
Cantilever out over what's
Yeah,
there.
because people, nobody's falling off the wharf since Jimmy Todd, that I know of. A long time ago.
Something like that. But we gotta make sure that, because there are, better piles in here, we gotta
And
make
there's
sure.
a heavy cement thing.
Right, we gotta make sure we don't foul those, so that you can get your vehicles here, then you can get your pedestrians here, and still have your floats down here with, whatever you got for fender piles, they don't foul this area here. But, yeah, so that's what I meant, that's kind of looking back at it this way, to be able to cantilever out and optimize this space.
Yeah.
That's great. All right, so,
Do you want to find out where our hoist could be if you ended up putting it in? I don't hear much excitement about a hoist.
I'm sorry, I don't do, there's just no water.
Well, yeah, where, the commercial floats?
Yeah.
Oh,
So-
yeah, I know that. I
So
know.
hoist in here.
I get that over.
If you're not gonna use it, I wouldn't bother.
You'd be picking your loads off the ground and pedestrian walk.
yeah, I think so.
Right,
No,
so that's,
if you-
so that's why we'd have to bump it out again, yeah, that would be the issue.
We'd have to,
Okay, so it's not-
we'd have to adjust, somehow we'd have to change the access to the course.
Once in a while, it'd be nice, but I don't know if it's worth.
But there is deep water on this side, so if there was a way that we could get you using both sides of the pier, I can't see it right now, because you've got a pedestrian, corridor right there.
Traps.
What's that?
You said you get the commercial fishermen using both sides of here, we use the traps,
Well, they currently use these floats here,
not the traps.
right, not for traps, but they,
The engine work, hot tanks, things like that, right? Am I wrong?
so all these hot tanks, how often does that happen? Does that happen?
Couple times a year, 3 or 4 times a year.
And that's, you're literally boiling the water until it's hot and putting your,
Well, they put them on the boat, they're a big tank, they have to get onto the boat.
okay. Yeah,
There are a couple little skips that we use.
Yeah, they're pretty good traps.
Yeah, you can go once in a while, yeah.
Okay,
And if somebody broke down, they're have to be there overnight, you know, their steering's gone, so they pull them in.
Right.
Yeah, so they can- Most of the traps are on the 6 to 8. The big boats do there, and the more regular sized boats do over here.
so, are these, deep water lobstermen, or are they still?
Oh,
They're all deep, are you guys all going deep water? Or are you staying?
No, it's winter, he's talking about winter,
Yeah, yeah.
fishing.
Yeah,
Well, they-
okay,
Yes.
All right,
so.
that's good. Sorry, yeah.
Yeah, so I had two questions. One is, are there any, in the foreseeable future, do you guys see any other uses of aquaculture that would be coming in and out of the stone here?
Yeah, I was gonna say about that, I mean, I definitely think aquaculture could be, happen more on the island, but I think it's still the same, as here unloading. It's not gonna be a product, product's not gonna be coming in there. It'll be kind of a similar situation as your crafts, but maybe just a step here.
And then the other question I had was, the part that's low, on the stone here, or if you raise just that section to,
So in here,
yeah, so that it's now pretty much level throughout, would that still, be topped over in big storms?
Yeah, no, what I think, Jim, because we've got pictures that shows
so,
the whole.
so if this generally is, yeah, it's A. What we're seeing is that you probably need to be up to 11 to prevent that overtopping.
But is that overtopping, is it the whole entire stone pier that's getting that all the time when there's a big storm, or is it just?
That big piece of, concrete that sticks up. That, I haven't seen that over top in the pictures.
Right.
That's about the only thing that was left done in one of the pictures that I saw.
Is that match what you guys see?
No, I think it's storm, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, I
Standing. I'll tell you what I think. We come down here, we stop, we look at the water here, we turn around, we go back, and the water will splash up here, but this is the part that's flooded, you turn around and still. Am I wrong? Anybody see different?
Jack, I just power panel and bike racks, it's dry.
Up here it's dry,
Yeah.
it's wet from here to here, yeah, and then, okay.
And then it floods on the other part, you've got pictures.
That's
of
where you
water
run up,
all the way around the store.
So, and just to clarify,
Yeah.
yeah. What I'm talking about is storm-induced flooding, not sea level rise yet. So that's what we're
Yeah,
talking about.
storms, right.
Yeah, storms that are getting up to here. Then but what we're talking about is FEMA right now is 9.3.
Something like that, yeah, of the
Okay.
existing.
So that makes some, I think, anecdotal sense that you might get a foot of water over some of the low spots. And what they do when they reset this is they recalibrate it based on rainfall intensity that they're seeing and they predict out. So that's how you get to that 11, 12 elevation for the foreseeable future. And the big question is up here, what is the sea level rise piece? And that is difficult to predict. And if you're already dealing with this and there's a cost associated with any sort of elevation change, there's a functionality change associated with raising the elevation. This is where it gets tougher to swallow some of these numbers that are out there, understanding that they're widely variable predictions, but we also do see it coming. So we need to try to come to terms with making some responsible recommendations. And this goes back to what we were talking about before we started this process off of building in resiliency so that if this happens, or when this happens, the community has the opportunity to address it without doing significant structural alterations to the stone wall itself. So you can take a stepwise approach if you need to take that stepwise approach. But at some point, there's probably got to be still some increase, at least in part of the height, to be able to get through the storms that we're seeing and that we're predicting for the next 25 to 50-year horizon.
Jason, what's the time frame for working with FEMA? You know, how, at what point will that kick in where you guys actually get into that conversation, do the models, or can you describe that?
Sure. So
Take a stab at that if you want.
yeah, I'll let you talk about the technical piece, but so we did apply, we pulled a grant together back in March. Well, I guess it was due the beginning of April, really, to be able to address that and get into the coastal engineering study. What has happened now is, and it's on your website, 2018 FEMA went through and set these draft or preliminary elevations. And now what has to happen is, because they're not finalized, there needs to be a process where you modify those. So you go through a coastal engineering study.
Right. Yeah, so what's happened is FEMA,
What's the timeframe around that?
FEMA is predicting that they're gonna approve the maps that are on your website now, the preliminary maps. They're gonna approve those in 2023. They've been saying that for the last 5 years. What we need to do is separate from that, is to do what's called a letter of map amendment, or letter of map revision, a LOMAR, and that process takes about a year.
Right.
So if we started that now, we would do it in a phased approach. We'd have the modeling done to get an idea of how much what a reasonable elevation would be to shoot for. And then we do some more work. But the whole process, the approval through FEMA takes about a year. So what would likely happen is that we end up with this LOMAR about the same time as the maps are approved. And then what FEMA would do is they would lower or revise the elevation at the pier based on the modeling that we've done. And quite frankly, and Jason's pointed it out, they've gone from 9.3 to 20 on the preliminary maps. And how practical is that? So we're confident that a LOMAR, letter of map revision, will bring that elevation down.
But this process also costs a lot of money, by FEMA with this, which is why this grant that Jason helped us apply was a $50,000 grant with a $25,000 match by the town. Would, if we decided to do this, not only cover the cost of what we're doing right now, having to pay right peers for this work, but it would, with the grant, hopefully cover the cost of going after FEMA and paying, what is it, $25,000 or some ridiculous number that
Yeah,
has been thrown out?
25
It's
to
a
40.
stepwise approach.
Right, yeah.
So you start out with a preliminary study that costs this much. Based on what you find in that, you come up with the next level. 25,000 is really a ceiling. We're hoping it would be less than that.
So if I may, based on what you just described, having it be a year to find out if we can get relief, if you might, from their numbers, is that going to hold us up getting a good concept design in the community from you?
No, because we're gonna design based on what we assume FEMA is going to accept. And we can design it and permit it based on the rules now, which are the 9.3. And if they continue to drag their feet and don't implement that, we could permit it under 9.3 right now. But Our suggestion here is it isn't prudent to do that, because we know that this is coming down the road. So there's what you, this balance of what you can do, what you should do. So the short answer, Mark, is no, we can keep moving forward.
But like you said, it can be a step approach where you can fix things to the 9 point whatever.
Yeah.
And then have a plan in place to go a little bit further.
Right.
With the next generation that's gonna.
Correct. So that's the other piece when we talk about concurrence among this group is, you know, we can provide a design for a resilient structure that can be added on to later. And then the question is, how far up this scale does the community think is reasonable? We understand costs play into that, to serve the overall needs of the facility for what we would recommend to be a design life of 50 to 75 years.
So Jason, you're talking about if we use what we've been talking about, moving the ferry
Right.
entrance back.
Yeah.
That you would be talking about that on the inland part of the wharf, not the end of the wharf. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
I'm not following.
Okay, so are you saying that you would, that number that you're talking about?
Oh, yeah, the high number.
The high number would go in
apply to here.
Would go in the back,
Would apply to here and, right.
right,
And then because you have pedestrian access through here, you're probably all this area that I kind of hashed up in green, we would raise. And so probably the part we wouldn't raise, I would think would be this part.
but the main part of the wharf, the old part of the wharf.
We
that
have to ramp down.
Yeah, so there'd be some sort of ramp that would come down. This
Not
way.
a boat.
But so it would be a ramp, not a gradual incline. Incline probably.
Same thing.
But for stacking, you wouldn't be too.
We're not talking 13, 15%, we're talking like 8% probably, 5 to 8%. We want to make it so you're not gonna bottom out your trailers, but at the same time that that you can get to a flat spot here as quickly as you can. And then, right, we were talking about, then you would raise this piece here, so it would be this space would get raised, and then you'd raise here as well. And then maybe this comes up here. And then it pushes the ramp, overextended it substantially, but it pushed out. And then this takeoff comes back to probably to here. And then we gotta figure out what to do with these slopes to make them still, because this ramp now is gonna need to get longer.
So the area that's gonna be compromised the most is likely this one.
Yeah, so I was gonna say, push those boats over to the other side.
Over here.
Yeah, for the most part, I mean, except for maybe on the big tide or something.
The Collins design that we looked at over years ago, my understanding with that was whatever they did in the wharf area, not where the boats are gonna, the lobster boats, but yes, the big picture. There was a page that whatever it was constructed of, that it would be able to then be built upon in the event that, so we've heard this, it's important and we understand. My question though, right now is, what do you find other communities, what is the right answer to say that we're going to structurally do this right for now? What are the years that people are saying that we should be responsible for? Quite frankly, I mean, 50 years to me is somebody else's problem. God love my relatives and whoever else is going to come down, but that's a long time that we have to prepare. But if we can think rationally about what have you heard communities say that they feel, how many years do they feel they're responsible for, whether it's the increase in the tide or what should we be looking at? So
If we consider this to be transportation infrastructure, which the CPC piece would be, that is a 75-year horizon is what we're trying to design for the codes. when we look at.
Thinking bridges and.
Yeah, well, we're in structure.
No, what I'm
Yeah,
saying,
yeah.
analogous.
Yeah, oh, yeah, now that's great, right. However, so that's new structures. When you're dealing with, existing structures, oftentimes you do back down to a 50-year horizon because you've got something that's already 130 something years old. And when you think out 30 years, and that's why we asked the question of what do we see the facility, the utility of this in the future? Because if there was something different that this is going to be used for, it may not be worth, and that's sort of like when you think about commercial real estate, those usually use a 25-year model, whereas institutional schools, big infrastructure like this, you're usually on a 50 to 75-year model, depending upon if you have an existing structure or a new structure. And part of that is the design life of the materials, and part of that is the utility of the structure. You know, what does it look like in 50 years?
But, I mean, this whole thing with sea level rise is brand new. Nobody's ever had to look at this before.
Right.
But I like what Don, I mean, so many about, because Jeff's right, there's older people with the lobster business that they're gonna have to be, you know, chucking it up over there, and they can't do that.
Right. So
And
that's why.
I think, yeah, that's a very good point of keeping that in mind.
Well, what do you, I mean, we did want to ask you, what do you, I know you may just say who the hell knows, right? But what do you see changing over the next, say, 20 to 30 years? Any thoughts?
In terms of fishing,
Yes, in terms of fishing off the island.
I mean, I don't know, the lobster resource is healthy. It's just a matter of whether people can afford to live on the island is the issue. I mean, there's gonna be fishing around today. So I would hope that there's people fishing actually from today.
So you don't see anything happening with technology that would change things?
No, I mean, I think that with the aquaculture opportunities and really the lobster resource being healthy, I think it's pretty solid.
I think Jeff's point is, will the lobster be able to afford to live here?
No, I get that, yeah.
Yeah, 20 years, maybe 50, I mean, who knows what the housing market's gonna do, but it's more and more difficult, so.
Has the number of lobstermen, fishermen gone down significantly in the past 20 years? Because the housing costs have changed a lot.
Yeah.
If you think about how many people were here 30 years ago, and how many are, you know, have either passed or gotten out of the business, and there haven't been the people coming up to fill those slots. So, you know, if you kind of do a demographic, you know, you could kind of start making a list.
I don't think the
How many
lobster
licenses
change.
should be 35? I haven't looked at it lately, but yeah, probably.
35 that live on the island.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure.
In our zone, yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many years ago, but there were at least 50, you know, if you think about that.
But Jeff, you also talked about the regulations. They've been really hard for people to get a license the last couple of years, and that might play into the gap
I
of
guess
why
that's what
they're
I'm
less.
thinking, yeah.
And if it's getting easier, then the hope is that
It
you
will
can
grow
get.
instead of continue to decline. Because people, as people have gotten out, there haven't been people coming in to fill those spots.
So when people are on the island and they're older and they, you know, pass away, do family members hang out in the houses usually? Or is it people selling it for the ridiculous
A lot of
price?
times they cash out because they can make the money.
Exactly. Well, I mean, it's no different than any, but
Yeah, there are some houses changing hands, certainly. I've seen a lot of commuters going back and forth, but I don't know that number has grown a lot, do you?
You know, I think-
Last year during COVID, we had a big spike in people become year-round residents of the town that had either been seasonal or just randomly moved.
It's changed.
I think the last 2 years were a big spike.
I'm trying to up,
Commuter numbers from CTC, because they have those over a long period of time, so that might be something interesting to look at.
Well, we know the community numbers gone through the roof, since I was in high school.
Right.
And we all used to go to school, and the commuters went on the Shasoko, which you'd have to make 20 trips with that thing now, so that has changed a lot.
what about the aquaculture? I can tell you that the communities that we're doing work in, they're putting in place, for the shellfish and also the shell, yeah.
I
So,
think the difference is here, because we're an unbridged island, people are taking their product to wherever they sell it.
Yeah, there will be no product getting off on the island.
Okay.
No, not a big volume, no.
because
The point,
Yeah, just has to get shipped off.
right, okay.
Yeah, this has been very insightful, very helpful. We've got through the majority of the questions.
Yeah, I think we got through them all. I think you can try.
We have 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay, any,
So who wants to give the presentation?
You know you love to do it. You got it.
Well,
You don't
so
have to. They're all heard it all.
I think you guys have been great.
A lot of courtesy here.
I would like to ask one more question if I could. There probably wouldn't be any need or benefit to looking at extending the length of the existing structure with a pile structure. Would there?
You're coming out this way. I think you're gonna impact all the infrastructure that you've got here.
yeah, so that from our perspective is if and when you reevaluate this wave screen,
I can't
Do
wait.
you have,
then you do
do
that.
you have an age, do you guys know from the people
Off
who
the
did that?
top of my head.
that's
I
the
mean, it's
word.
already deteriorating.
Yeah, some
Yeah.
people say it's today, some people say it's 15 years.
Yeah.
I was just asking the question while we're talking about people coming in and using the end of the works for certain uses.
I think any type of build out in the future would have to go towards deep water,
Correct, yeah.
and our frame of reference for deep water changed recently. Okay, so it may not be off the end of the pier, it may actually be towards the dredge
Right.
areas, the turnaround,
There
perhaps
was some
adjacent,
discussion about
perhaps
extending.
adjacent to the barge ramp.
Yeah.
Okay, the ramp, sorry. But if you came out that way with a pile structure that actually gave you 8 feet of water all
Right.
tide, that's useful.
And
It's more
and
protected.
protected, yeah, thank you, Brian, yeah.
That's where you're going. But if you came out right in that area that you've got labeled right there, Barry,
Yeah.
with a pile deck structure,
This
2
side
feet
of
of
it?
water,
Yeah, okay.
it would still leave the ramp open. And
Leave the
you
ramp,
allow
yeah,
us
you're
to
right.
tie up
That's a
the tide.
really good idea.
Yeah.
That
Now,
would-
with all due respect,
Trap.
you can't come out that far, you're gonna obstruct the whole turning basin. If you come out parallel to the face of the pier,
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I'm not trying to scale, right, yeah.
Yeah, right.
to bring the entire pier face out, 2 deep water.
Oh, you're suggesting.
You mean like along here, right?
Banana boat, tide, look at it.
Yeah, you've got kind of like a
Yeah.
channel through there. Like, you've almost got that low water, you can almost see a channel.
That is, if you look at the Army Corps,
We got about
Maybe
8 feet
their
of water,
spec-
low tide, all the way
their
here.
spec for dredging was
8
done
feet
basically
of water, all
from
through
here.
here.
So therefore, bring the pier to deep water.
Yeah,
Not PG.
so that makes sense.
Now, would you have to, but that area is one of the lowest areas, so you have to raise that area up.
That's what it said, that's where you put waste.
Yeah.
All right, good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Right.
everybody.
That makes sense, yeah.
Yeah, next week, parking.
We've already covered that. You don't have to-
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
No, that's next month.